Chapter 743. Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Above the main hall, a group of people greeted Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Great Yong's seventh prince. Looking at the arrogant middle-aged man at the front, Empress Dowager Yan Shi's voice was cold. Seventh prince has come from afar and must be very tired. Please rest early. The ambition in the other party's eyes was obvious. She was disgusted and did not want to talk to him. However, what's there to be tired about coming here to marry the Empress Dowager? Looking at Empress Dowager Yan Shi in the main hall, the seventh prince of Yong heard the meaning in her words. The light in his eyes was cold. *tch, I gave you face, but you didn't want it. He sneered and said slowly, it's the Empress Dowager who works day and night for state affairs. This prince really can't bear it. But it doesn't matter. It won't be long before this prince can share the Empress Dowager's worries. At that time, the Empress Dowager won't have to work so hard. As soon as his words came out, the expressions of everyone in the main hall changed. Impudent. Seventh prince, what do you mean by this? Above the main hall, the officials were indignant. The other party's words clearly wanted to encroach on the throne of Great Chu. His words were so obvious. So open and above board. He really didn't put Great Chu in his eyes at all. Humph. Is there anything wrong with what this prince said? Great Yong's seventh prince looked at them coldly and said proudly, in the future, as the Empress Dowager's husband, this prince naturally can't bear to see this prince's wife so tired. These things will naturally be taken care of by this prince on her behalf. What's wrong? When he said this, Empress Dowager Yan Shi's voice had already sounded coldly. Great Yong's seventh prince really doesn't need to worry so much. The groom selection hasn't started yet. My husband may not be you. It's still too early for you to say these words. Great Yong's ambition was obvious. Even if Empress Dowager Yan Shi randomly chose someone from the empire's family, she would not let them succeed. However, Empress Dowager's words are wrong. Great Yong's seventh prince's expression was cold. This prince admires the Empress Dowager wholeheartedly. The world knows that I even gave up my title in Great Yong dynasty. This prince believes that everyone is willing to fulfill my wish. Seeing this prince's deep affection, they will definitely not compete with this prince again. So. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi and the ministers of Great Chu. He sneered, Empress Dowager, be prepared that you can only choose this king. Ha! As he spoke, he laughed loudly and led the crowd away. Your Majesty. Looking at his back as he left, all the courtiers looked anxious as they all looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Great Yong's seventh prince's words clearly had a deeper meaning. Clearly, he was determined to win the Great Chu this time. What to do? Empress Dowager, why don't we send out the army and directly? A general said at this moment. Then, under Empress Dowager Yan Shi's gaze, he quietly lost his voice. Empress Dowager Yan Shi closed her eyes slightly. Sending out a large army would naturally solve the problem once and for all. However, Great Yong's seventh prince had been killed here by Great Chu's army. This would inevitably cause Great Yong to mobilize its troops. Wouldn't that give Great Yong an excuse to attack? Great Yong's seventh prince dared to be so arrogant and speak such arrogant words in this hall. Wasn't he relying on the fact that they couldn't do anything to him? Not to mention sending out a large army, even if they sent out experts, they couldn't kill him. Otherwise, Great Yong would immediately mobilize its troops. Empress Dowager Yan Shi had already received the battle report from the border. Great Yong's army had already begun to assemble. Just after Great Yong's seventh prince moved. It went without saying who they were targeting. Therefore, Great Yong's seventh prince couldn't be killed. This prince personally went to pay her a visit, but she only saw this prince once and wanted to chase me out. Why don't you think about her current situation? How much longer does she think she can stay in the limelight? The seventh prince of Great Yong coldly stated, originally, seeing that her looks were not bad, this prince was prepared to spare her life after entering Great Chu. Now, it seems like there's no need for that. Unappreciative thing. He snorted coldly. Great Chu's Empress Dowager Yan Shi's scheming ability is not weak. Feng Yuan looked at him with an indifferent expression. If uncle wants a woman, I will naturally find one for you in the future. What can't you have? Don't keep a disaster like her. Luo 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 luos luo luo o luos, luos, luo 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 o luo luo o sss luo o asses. S's luos. Luo luoses luos luo 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 luo. Empress Dowager. A general bowed and knelt in front of Empress Dowager Yan Shi and said in a deep voice, all the teams have been attacked. It is estimated that they will not be able to reach the holy capital by the time of the competition. The general's expression was very serious. So far, only the Great Yong dynasty's seventh prince and his group had reached the holy capital. He was already a martial emperor. This time, not only did old Master Luo return to his youthful appearance, but his bodily functions were also instantly restored to their peak. His original strength of a martial king, under the effect of the enormous medicinal power, directly rose to the level of a martial emperor. In the future, his appearance would be fixed at this moment. Just like Empress Dowager Yan Shi, he would never age again. Ha! Grandpa Luo laughed happily. He originally thought that he would have to protect Yan Shi with his old and decrepit appearance for the rest of his life. Even if his strength increased in the future, it would be impossible for him to return to his youthful appearance. But he didn't expect that his granddaughter would directly refine such a heaven-defying elixir that completely reversed his fate. At this moment, Luo Tong could feel that his body was brimming with vitality. Chapter 747. Grandpa. Luo Qingtong heard the commotion and rushed over. When she saw old Master Luo laughing in the sky, she immediately laughed. Grandpa, congratulations. Ha ha ha. Congratulations to you. Grandfather Luo's face was full of joy. Coupled with his handsome and resolute face, there was an inexplicably cute contrast. He landed in front of Luo Qingtong and quickly said, Qingtong, how is your grandma? I'm young again. Let's go to your grandma. If we're late, my wife will run away with someone else. Grandfather Luo was anxious and pulled Luo Qingtong away. The latter hurriedly stopped him. Wait. Don't worry, Grandpa. You're not strong enough. Thinking of the news she received, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Don't you want to marry my grandma with your own strength? Luo Qingtong looked at him and said, Grandpa, this is a rare opportunity. Empress Dowager is looking for a husband. As long as you can stand out, you can marry my grandma openly. Before she could finish her sentence, Grandpa Luo yelled at her anxiously. All right. You lass, can you stop keeping me in suspense? Hurry up. Tell me, what's the way? Even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire, Grandpa will go. Old Master Luo was too anxious just now, so he forgot about it. But, let's make it clear first. Will this hurt you? If it does, Grandpa won't improve his strength. Grandfather Luo pursed his lips and said, Anyway, your grandma. I'm fine as long as I can stay by her side. I'm not asking for anything. Io, what are you doing? Why are you taking off my clothes? I'm young now. Don't look at indecent things, you know. Grandfather Luo hugged his chest and struggled with all his might. Luo Qingtong was not in a good mood. Hurry up. With that figure of yours, I saw it when you ran out of the secret passage the last time. Even the scratches on your body were not missed. Grandfather Luo's face turned red. What do you know? You're just a child. Stop. I'll do it myself. Old Master Luo tugged at his clothes. It took him a lot of effort to regain control. He quickly took off his clothes, then used his clothes to cover half of his upper body and said, "Is this okay?" "Yes." Luo Qingtong almost could not hold back her laughter when she saw old Master Luo like this. "That's enough." She pulled old Master Luo back to his room. "Grandpa, bear with the pain." As Luo Qingtong spoke, she used her hand as a pen and poked an acupoint on old Master Luo's back. Following the drawing method of the soul map, streaks of blood-red light shot out from her eyes and slowly drew along old Master Luo's meridians. Every time he moved, old Master Luo felt as if a tendon was being pulled out of his body. Wang. Following Luo Qingtong's drawing, the power of heaven and earth and the surroundings all gathered towards her. The so-called borrowing spirit diagram was to use the human body as a refining tool and draw lines of inscription patterns on it. It would allow the human body to borrow the power of heaven and earth like a sacred weapon. This was the power of the sacred state. Luo Qingtong couldn't raise old Master Luo's strength infinitely, let alone raise his strength from the martial king realm to the sacred state in an instant. However, by using the soul map, Luo Qingtong could temporarily grant old Master Luo the power of the sacred state. This was the power of an inscription master. Chapter 748. Boz. Luo Qingtong's fingers kept moving on old Master Luo's back. The energy required for the middle-level inscription technique was incomparable to that of the low-level inscription technique. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong's strength had reached the middle-level martial king realm. During this period of time, her strength had increased to a certain extent because she had studied the damaged sage state celestial artifacts. From the middle-level martial king realm, she had reached the advanced martial king realm. At the same time, she had also filled the 1,000-year soul-luring wood with energy. After all, she had used the power of the heaven and earth tribulation thunder to kill a group of martial spirit realm cultivators. Under such circumstances, the heart of the 1,000-year soul-luring wood was naturally filled with energy. Boz. Streams of energy were channeled into the inscription lines on old Master Luo's back. As more and more inscription lines were drawn, the inscription pattern became more and more complete. Swoosh. As the last line in Luo Qingtong's hand landed and connected with the first inscription line, the inscription pattern on old Master Luo's back was completely formed. Boom! Traces of the sage state's energy were generated and flowed into the soul borrowing diagram on old Master Luo's back. With this trace of the sage state's energy, old Master Luo could use it to activate the power of heaven and earth in the air. Luo Qingtong's strength was still weak. What she had drawn was the lowest level of the soul borrowing diagram, which was only equivalent to the strength of a beginner sage state expert. When her strength increased in the future, she would be able to draw more powerful soul borrowing diagrams. At that time, it could be a trump card in her hands. Moreover, there were more advanced inscription techniques above the soul borrowing diagram. All of this made Luo Qingtong very surprised and interested. Inscription techniques were rarer than anything she had ever come into contact with. She could not imagine how the powerful Immortal Slayer Palace had been destroyed. And how powerful was the person who had destroyed them. That old man Tian Mingzi had really brought her a lot of trouble. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched slightly. Fortunately, as long as there was a sufficient price, she was not afraid of trouble. Boom! As Luo Qingtong completed her actions, old man Luo immediately immersed himself in the fusion of power brought about by the borrowing spirit diagram. He still needed to master that strand of Saint Realm power. That way, he wouldn't be flustered when he used it in the future. The method to use it was engraved in the soul borrow diagram. The moment Luo Qingtong finished drawing it, it was integrated into grandfather Luo's mind. Boom! Boom! In old Master Luo's mind, he practiced countless ways to use the power of the sacred state. As he closed his eyes and began to comprehend these methods, the day of the Empress Dowager's groom selection that Prince Ning had released in the Great Chu dynasty arrived. In order to not give Empress Dowager Yan Shi too much time to prepare and make a comeback, when Ning Wang released the news, he set the time to half a month later. Now, it was time. The seventh Prince of Yong immediately led Feng Wan and a group of people from the Great Yong sacred dynasty into the Chu imperial palace. Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Looking at the woman sitting under the eaves of the main hall under the Jade Pavilion, the seventh Prince of Yong's expression was proud. That pair of long and narrow eyes were indescribably teasing and complacent. I've said it before. Today, you can only choose me. He raised his head and looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi with a superior expression. Chapter 749. It's not time yet. Why are you so anxious? Empress Dowager Yan Shi clenched her fists under her sleeves. Her beautiful fingers were clenched into a bowl. She didn't know what she was waiting for. Previously, he had received news that all the marriage teams had been stopped outside. What's more, with the current arrogance of Great Yong's seventh prince, they must have arranged a lot of people outside the holy capital to prevent any marriage teams from entering the holy capital. This was a game between the two sacred dynasties. The Great Yong sacred dynasty was unprepared. Even if Empress Dowager Yan Shi sent an army to help, it would be too late. Great Yong's seventh prince didn't need to stop those people for long. As long as they could delay until today, Empress Dowager Yan Shi would have no choice but to marry him, the only candidate. Otherwise, they would be fooling the world. The Great Yong sacred dynasty could still send troops in the name of Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Empress Dowager Yan Shi couldn't advance or retreat. Whether she advanced or retreated, it was the Great Yong sacred dynasty's victory. The only way to resolve this crisis was to die and prove one's resolve with death. When Prince Ning released the news, he must have thought of this. He wanted to take revenge on Empress Dowager Yan Shi and Great Chu. If Empress Dowager Yan Shi didn't die, Great Chu would be robbed. That bastard! Empress Dowager Yan Shi's eyes were cold to the extreme, and her heart was full of hatred. Humph! Since the Empress Dowager still wants to struggle, then this prince will wait with the Empress Dowager. Let's see who can stop this prince in the end. Great Yong's seventh prince sneered. He was confident in his niece's ability. Feng Wan showed an extremely monstrous talent at the age of 12. In the Great Yong sacred dynasty, she, as the first princess, had already ruled with the emperor. In the Great Yong sacred dynasty, all the political affairs and important decisions were made by her. That royal brother of his listened to everything she said. As for the members of the imperial family and the officials, they all respected her. With his niece's ability, the position of Great Yong's empress was no longer enough to attract her. The emperor of 4 dynasties, the #1 genius of Tru's Spill continent, that was what she pursued. She wanted the world of Great Chu. With layers of arrangements, she would succeed. At this time, Great Yong's 7th prince still didn't know that his niece had failed once. He almost died in Prince Ning's mansion of Great Chu. If he knew, he wouldn't be so confident. Rumble. In the main city of the Black Field, Elder Luo's power had reached its peak. With a boom, the aura around his body exploded. In an instant, with the soul borrowing diagram on his back as the center, a wave of extremely vast and boundless power of the world gathered from all directions in the sky. Chapter 750. A person like her was born to be an overlord. A woman destined to stand at the pinnacle of this world. No wonder this woman was so arrogant and domineering when it first met her. A woman with such talent and ability would be a coward if she was timid and overcautious, okay? A true powerhouse would not lower his head even when he was at a disadvantage. Otherwise, what was the point of having such talent and ability? What was the point of becoming stronger? Lower your head once, lower your head again and again. A true powerhouse would face adversity head-on and fight for survival. They would not lower their heads when they were in trouble. The so-called rice light and the dim light was all bullshit. If one didn't have the heart to fight to the death in the face of the strong, if one didn't have the heart to rise from the brink of death, if one didn't have the unyielding heart to laugh proudly at the world and look down on all directions, if one didn't have the unyielding heart to even the heavens, how could one become an expert? Even if one became stronger, they would only be a slightly stronger coward. Wasn't the reason why Little Pig chose Luo Qingtong as its contracted master because she was unrestrained in the face of adversity? A coward was not worthy to be its master, even if it was only a sealed pink pig. However, its true form was something that even the 4 seas and 8 wastelands feared. It's done. Luo Qingtong nodded in satisfaction as she looked at the energy flowing around Grandfather Luo. Borrowing the sliver of Saint State power from the spirit map would not harm Old Man Luo's cultivation base at all. With the spirit diagram, Grandfather Luo could temporarily possess the power of Sage Realm without forcefully increasing his strength or damaging his foundation. It was enough to deal with the Empress Dowager's groom selection. She wanted her grandfather to marry her grandmother in a grand manner to make up for their biggest regret. Luo Qingtong knew that the thing Grandfather Luo regretted the most in his life was being trapped in the mountains for trusting his brothers. When he finally broke out of the encirclement, he found out that his wife and son were being persecuted. He saved his son but lost his lover forever. Grandfather Luo had never stepped out of the eastern fence in his life. He even entrusted his hot-bloodedness and heroism to the army and didn't even care about the Luo family. Wasn't it because she was engaged to the empire and her parents were no longer around? It was because of this that he no longer cared about his family and didn't even care about his family. Otherwise, with old Master Luo's past glory, how could the Luo family be in such dire straits? Luo Qingtong was going to make up for this regret. Luo Qingtong had said before that she would give her grandfather the best. Ha! Grandpa Luo's joyful voice resounded in the sky. Even at this moment, he still felt like he was dreaming. His youth, his strength, all of it made her feel like she was in a dream. Old Master Luo was overjoyed. He was so happy that he was about to cry. He finally had the chance to make up for the regrets of the past and get back the lover that he had failed to save. Qingtong, go. Let's go pick up your grandmother. He laughed heartily as he landed in front of Luo Qingtong. Wrong, I'm going to marry her. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. Grandpa, are you ready? Let's go and marry Grandma again. Let her name be crowned with your surname. Let her live up to her name of being the Marquis of the Eastern Fence Country. Ha! Yes. Let's go and marry her. Tears glistened in Grandfather Luo's eyes. Let's go. His long-cherished wish of many years was solved in one day. Chapter 751. Alright, let's go. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she raised her hand and released her spirit boat flying ship. During this period of time, Luo Qingtong didn't stay idle while Grandfather Luo was fusing with the Sage Realm energy. At this moment, the flying boat was decorated in red and green, and it looked like a marriage proposal. The flying boat was filled with the betrothal gifts that Luo Qingtong prepared for Grandfather Luo. This time, she swore to let her grandfather marry her grandmother in a grand manner. Grandfather, let's go. Luo Qingtong smiled at Grandfather Luo. All right. Grandfather Luo said as he laughed heartily. He flicked his sleeves and jumped onto the flying boat. Congratulations, Grandfather Luo. In the Blackfield City Lord Mansion, a group of experts was already waiting for orders. Dozens of flying boats rose into the air and guarded Luo Qingtong's flying boat. Cough cough. Qingtong, isn't this a little too grand? Old Master Luo's heart trembled as he looked at the spirit boats and flying boats around him. These were all spirit boats and flying ships. Even the imperial family of the empire might not be able to own a flying boat. Only the big forces and aristocratic families in the Holy Dynasty could own one. Grandfather Luo was very happy that his granddaughter made such a grand scene and used the flying boats of the Black Field to make herself look good. He naturally liked the grand scene, but he was afraid that his granddaughter would owe the Black Field too much and it would be difficult for her to repay them. After all, even if they were business partners, they still had to settle accounts clearly. Although his granddaughter was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye and had a revered status in the Black Field, she still had to pay a corresponding price for using the Black Field's forces. Thinking of this, Grandfather Luo's heart was suddenly filled with indescribable worries. He quickly wanted his granddaughter to not be so busy. If Little Pig knew what he was thinking, he would definitely roll his eyes. What kind of price did Luo Qingtong have to pay to use the Black Field's forces? That man could not wait to present the entire Black Field to her. He was afraid that if she did not use it, she would not be able to live up to her title as the future mistress of the Black Field. This old man was still worried about her. "No, Grandpa, let's go." Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. If he didn't do that, he might not even be able to enter the city gates of the Great Chu holy capital. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes as she thought of the news she had received. Buzz! With a thought, the entire spirit ship rose into the air and flew out of the main city of the Black Field. Look! Many spirit boats and flying ships have appeared from the direction of the city lord's mansion. Yes. It seems to be heading in the direction of the holy capital of the Great Chu. What's going on? Is the Black Field going to war with the Great Chu's sacred dynasty? Seeing this scene, everyone in the main city of the Black Field was dumbfounded. But soon, someone saw the red and green decorations on Luo Qingtong's spirit ship and immediately shouted, "It's a marriage proposal fleet." Ah! I know, it's a marriage proposal fleet from the Great Chu Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Oh my God! Such a big move, so many fleet guards in the Black Field, who is it? Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong's spirit ship and saw that there was no sign of the Black Field on it. Just who was it that could make the Black Domain main city dispatch so many spirit boats and airship guards? Generally, the big forces and aristocratic families in the sacred dynasty would not have such a posture, right? While everyone in the Black Field was surprised, in the Great Chu Imperial Palace. Chapter 752. Empress Dowager Yan Shi, there's only 15 minutes left. Do you still want to continue struggling? Ha, don't worry. No one will come. This king will be the only one left here. He said with a face full of confidence. Everything is unknown until the last moment. It's not time yet. Great Yong's 7th prince, it's too early for you to be happy. Empress Dowager Yan Shi gritted her teeth. Although she was unwilling to admit defeat, under her sleeves, her fingertips and fingernails were all broken. Was there really no other way? Rumble. Outside the holy capital of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty. Luo Qingtong's spirit ship had just entered the border of the holy capital when it was immediately attacked. Rumble. One by one, well-trained experts rushed out from the border of the holy capital and rushed toward Luo Qingtong's spirit ship. Stop them. Don't let them enter the holy capital of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty. Those people shouted fiercely. However, before they could finish their words, their leaping figures instantly froze in midair. Rumble. One by one, the figures of spirit ships rushed out from behind Luo Qingtong's spirit ship. The dense and sharp black pattern on it and the many powerful auras that radiated from it caused the expressions of the group of experts, who had come to attack, to change drastically. Black Field. It's the people of the Black Field. These are the spirit ships of the Black Field. After Luo Qingtong's spirit ship, the black spirit ships appeared one after another. In an instant, the experts of the Great Yong sacred dynasty who came to attack turned ashen. Oh my God! There were so many spirit boats and flying ships. Did the entire Black Domain main city turn out in full force? Could it be that the city lord of the Black Field wants to marry Empress Dowager Yen Shi? But even the city lord of the Black Field could not mobilize such a large force of the Black Field, right? Moreover, they looked at the figures that suddenly appeared and floated above the numerous spirit ships of the Black Field. In an instant, they felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, trembling uncontrollably. Saint Realm Expert. There were so many Saint Realm Experts. Oh my God! What was going on? The experts of the Great Yong dynasty, who had been clamoring to attack Luo Qintong and the others and prevent them from entering the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, froze. In such a situation, who was besieging who? Who was attacking who? Their eyes were filled with shock as they stood in mid-air, looking at the huge fleet of spirit boats in front of them as they unfolded one after another. With an icy gaze, Luo Qintong stood atop her spirit boat. Looking at the dumbfounded Great Yong experts in front of her, she suddenly raised her hand and waved. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Intercept them and prevent them from entering the holy capital of Great Chu. Then, none of them would be spared. She wanted to see who could stop her from letting her grandfather marry her grandmother. Continue forward. Leaving a portion of the Black Field spirit boats to be responsible for eliminating these ambushers, Luo Qintong continued to steer the spirit boat forward. Numerous Black Domain spirit boats and flying ships were following them from all directions. Rumble. The fleet approached the glorious and majestic city of the holy capital of Great Chu. Not long after Luo Qintong led the fleet out of the Black Field, a spirit boat suddenly appeared above the city lord's residence in the Black Field. Lord. Chapter 753. Yes. Where is she? Yi Qinqian's gaze swept across the entire city lord's mansion. Using his divine sense, he did not find Luo Qintong's figure. Lord Evil Doctor has just led the old master to the Chu dynasty's holy capital. A Black Field expert said respectfully, and then told him everything that had happened during this period of time. At the same time, in the Chu dynasty's imperial palace. Watching the last grain of sand fall, the seventh prince of Yong suddenly stood up, looked at Empress Dowager Yen Shi in front of him, and laughed loudly. It's time. Empress Dowager Yen Shi, announce it. I am your husband. The only candidate for the Empress Dowager's groom selection this time. His face was full of complacency and ridicule. Empress Dowager Yen Shi looked at the expression on his face, and the hand under her sleeve clenched a short dagger. Luo Tong, in this life, we will never meet again. She suddenly clenched her 5 fingers. However, at this moment, rumble. Outside the outer wall of the imperial city, a loud rumble of spirit ships suddenly sounded. Soon after, an extremely loud and clear voice suddenly resounded from outside, like the sound of stormy waves and thunder drums. It was mixed in with the loud rumbling noises and suddenly transmitted into the room. Eastern border country's Marquis Luo Tong has come to marry the Chu dynasty's Empress Dowager Yen Shi. The moment the last word landed, the last grain of sand also completely fell to the bottom of the hourglass below. Rumble. In the Chu dynasty's holy capital, the red and green spirit ships led the way, and dozens of black spirit ships guarded on the left and right, rushing down from the outside in a line. Leaping across the sky. Look! It's the Black Field spirit ships. My God! It's actually the Black Field spirit ships. Who is this eastern border country's Marquis Luo Tong, to be able to invite people from the Black Field to protect him? Looking at this situation, I'm afraid the Black Field spirit ships in the Black Field's main city of the Chu dynasty have all come out. In the Chu dynasty's holy capital, everyone was shocked when they saw the fleet rushing in from the outside. Eastern border country. I don't seem to have heard of it. Which commandery of which holy dynasty? Or was it an extremely powerful empire that was about to be promoted to a commandery? When the other party reported his name, did he miss the word D? However, there were also people who slapped their heads. I've heard of this eastern border country. Last time, when a certain immortal sect relic appeared in the sacred dynasty of the Empire of Qin, it caused a great uproar. The eastern border country is nearby. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember it too. But, in the vicinity of the immortal sect's ruins, everything is inferior countries. As soon as that person's voice rang out, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Are you kidding me? Low-tier country. After a long while, someone finally spoke up dryly. That's impossible, right? Yes. How is it possible for an inferior country to have such wealth? The group of people looked at the domineering fleet that was soaring across the sky and fell silent. Low-class country. A marquis had actually come to propose marriage to the Empress Dowager of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty. Furthermore, they had even invited the people of the Black Field to escort them. Why did this sound so much like a fantasy story? But at this moment, this fantasy story had just happened in front of them. In the Chu dynasty's imperial palace, hearing the thunderous sound outside, the dagger in Yan Shi's hand fell to the ground with a clang. Luo Tong. She looked surprised, happy, and worried. She looked in disbelief at the main gate of the Chu dynasty's imperial palace. How was this possible? Luo Tong. She must have heard wrongly. Chapter 754. Just as Empress Dowager Yan Shi was thinking this, the ministers beside her cried out in surprise. Great, Empress Dowager! Someone has finally appeared. In this way, they would have room to turn the situation around. The faces of the ministers were filled with joy. The sudden burst of hope after despair made them look forward to the person who was about to appear. No matter who the other party was, to be able to appear at this time, they must have some ability. This time, they might really be able to survive the disaster. Yes. Empress Dowager Yan Shi was stunned. Was she really not dreaming? Just as Empress Dowager Yan Shi was stunned, Feng Wan, who was sitting next to the 7th Prince of Yong, suddenly frowned and his eyes turned cold. The Marquis of the Eastern Border Kingdom. The Luo family of the Eastern Border Kingdom. Did she hear it wrong? Feng Wan looked outside the palace coldly, almost thinking that he was hallucinating. For Feng Wan, the Luo family of the Eastern Border Kingdom was like an unkillable bug that kept jumping around. It was fine that they were not destroyed by the imperial family of Tianyu before, but now they even jumped in front of him. A lowly family of a lowly country actually dared to propose marriage to Empress Dowager Yan Shi of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty. Who gave them the courage and confidence? No wonder his people did not stop them. No one would have thought that they would be so overconfident. However, just as Feng Wan thought so, rumble. Outside the main gate of the Great Chu Imperial Palace in the distance, an extremely powerful fleet of spirit ships swept over. Rumble. Under the orders of the ministers of the Great Chu Imperial Palace, the defensive formation above the Great Chu Imperial Palace was completely opened, letting this huge fleet in. Under normal circumstances, this was absolutely impossible. But at this time, the people of the Great Chu were eager to slap the faces of the 7th Prince of Yong and the others, so they naturally went all out to build momentum for Luo Qintong and the others. Rumble. The fleet stopped at the most central square of the Great Chu Imperial Palace. The row of pitch-black spirit ships and the obvious black region symbol on them caused everyone's faces to change in shock. Great Chu was naturally overjoyed. As for the 7th Prince of Yong, his face suddenly sank. Feng Wan, in particular, looked at the fleet with a gloomy and cold gaze. What was going on? How could the Luo family of the eastern fence line be able to invite people from the Black Field to protect them? These Black Field spirit ships were emanating energy waves. Clearly, they had come from the main city. Almost all of them were Earth-grade spaceships. How could the people of the Luo clan of the eastern fence line be qualified? He was actually able to mobilize the power of the Black Field's main city. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Chapter 755. Dong. That person's figure landed on the square in the palace. He was dressed in a dark blue robe, outlining his iron-blooded and domineering aura. Old Master Luo's face was filled with excitement as he looked at the beautiful woman who was sitting under the canopy of the luxurious building in front of him. I'm here to marry you," he said resolutely. That pair of affectionate eyes looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi. After decades, he finally had the opportunity to stand in front of the woman he loved most and say such words. Old Master Luo originally thought that he would miss Yan Shi in this lifetime. Just like that time when he killed his way out of the beast tied deep in the mountains, he only had time to see a corner of her clothes slide down the cliff in front of his eyes. In this life, he did not owe his family, nor did he owe anyone. He only owed her one sentence: he did not let her down in this life. "I'm here to pick you up." Impudent. Old Master Luo's voice came out, and in an instant, Great Yong's seventh prince shouted angrily. His plan was ruined, and the person who came seemed to have an old relationship with Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Great Yong's seventh prince, who had long regarded Empress Dowager Yan Shi as his exclusive property, instantly had a déjà vu of being cuckolded. Looking at old Master Luo standing on the square of the main hall, his face was angry. "You're just a marquis from an inferior country. Who gave you the guts to say such things to the Empress Dowager of the Sacred Dynasty? What qualifications do you have to come and propose? Do you have the ability to compete with this prince? A mere marquis of an inferior country." Great Yong's seventh prince's words immediately caused the expressions of many great Chu officials present to change. They did not care if old Master Luo had an old relationship with Empress Dowager Yan Shi, as long as he could stop Great Yong's conspiracy. What's more, it would be better if he really had an old relationship with Empress Dowager Yan Shi. After all, it was naturally better to choose a person who had an affair with the Empress Dowager than to choose the seventh prince who was eyeing Great Chu covetously. But a marquis of an inferior country, could he stop Great Yong's conspiracy? This was what the officials of Great Chu were worried about. They had put all their hopes on old Master Luo. Now that they heard Great Yong's seventh prince's words, they were shocked and instantly turned cold. A marquis from an inferior country, the other party's strength might not even be as strong as a bodyguard of the seventh prince of Yong. How could they stop the seventh prince of Great Yong's conspiracy? After all, since they were asking for the Empress Dowager's hand in marriage, they naturally had to compete. Regardless of family background or financial resources, Grandfather Luo was clearly no match for Great Yong's seventh prince. All of Empress Dowager Yan Shi's attention was on old Master Luo. She looked at the valiant figure standing on the square. She almost used up all the strength in her body to restrain herself from immediately getting up and flying over. At this moment, hearing Great Yong's seventh prince's words, her complexion changed as she looked worriedly at Grandfather Luo. At this moment, a faint and leisurely voice suddenly sounded from the red and green spirit ship. "Then what does Great Yong's seventh prince feel is qualified to compete with you?" As this voice rang out, a figure slowly appeared at the entrance of the spirit ship. Luo Qingtong looked indifferent. With her hands behind her back, she waved her sleeves and slowly walked down from the spirit ship. Chapter 756. Everyone looked at the figure walking down from the airship. In an instant, everyone fell silent. The young girl's face was like a hibiscus, her skin was smooth and creamy, and her pair of elegant eyebrows were like the flowers of the distant mountains. Under a light touch, it was a breathtaking charm. Her nose was slightly pointed, her eyebrows were creamy, and her cheeks were rosy. The hint of a smile on his lips revealed a devilish aura, absolutely charming and domineering. That graceful and leisurely posture, that peerless beauty, everyone's gaze involuntarily looked at Luo Qingtong, and then at Feng Yuan. They were not inferior in the slightest. In fact, Luo Qingtong's posture and appearance were slightly better than Feng Yuan's. If they didn't know that Feng Yuan was the princess of the Great Yong dynasty, they would have mistakenly thought that Luo Qingtong was the peerless and graceful princess that could only be raised under the majestic Great Yong dynasty. After all, her appearance and bearing were not inferior in the slightest. Low-level small country. Everyone couldn't help but recall the words of the Great Yong's seventh prince just now, and they were suddenly filled with doubts. Was this pair of grandfather and granddaughter really from a marquis household in a low-level small country? Could a lowly family from such a lowly country really raise such a graceful, noble, and gorgeous young lady? Everyone's gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong, and from time to time, they would look at Feng Yuan. Looking at these gazes, the latter was indescribably angry. However, Feng Yuan didn't expect Luo Qingtong to be so outstanding. Looking at the young girl walking down from the airship, she couldn't help but admit that Luo Qingtong's aura was not something that the legitimate daughter of a marquis household in a low-level small country could possess. She would believe it even if the other party was the princess of the Great Yong dynasty. The Luo family's Qingtong was actually such a beautiful young girl. Then why did the royal family of Tianyu dislike her so much? Feng Yuan had never seen Luo Qingtong before, and had only heard of her existence from others. He knew that she was Yu Wenma's fiancée, but neither he nor Tianyu's royal family liked her. She had thought that the other party was merely the first daughter of an ordinary marquis, and the kind that was especially unpresentable. She couldn't even compare to the young ladies of the empire's great clans. But who would have thought that the other party was actually so magnificent? Even if no one said it, their eyes clearly told Feng Yuan that she had been suppressed. He had been suppressed by a young girl from a low-level family that came from a low-level family from a low-level country. Feng Yuan's eyes were cold. She looked at Luo Qingtong, who was standing in front of grandfather Luo, and said coldly, "Luo Qingtong. Miss Luo. This doesn't seem to be a place where you can interrupt, right?" When she said this, she coldly raised her head and looked at Luo Qingtong with an aloof gaze. Your grandfather, as Empress Dowager Yan Shi's pursuer, has the qualifications to talk to us. But who are you to stand here and talk to us? This highness is the first princess of the Great Yong dynasty, and my uncle is the seventh prince of Great Yong. What kind of identity and confidence do you have to dare to stand in front of us and talk to us? Before you ask, kneel down and greet us. Saying this, she coldly flicked her sleeves and looked at Luo Qingtong. So what if she was extraordinarily beautiful and had an extraordinary temperament? Since he had overpowered her, she would overpower him again. With the other party's identity, what could she use to compare with her? Evil Dr. Ghost, I was able to invite people from the Black Domain to support her. Could it be that he could give her a more prominent identity than his? Chapter 757 F***CK In Luo Qingtong's sleeves, Little Pig was about to jump through them. What did this woman say? She wants you to kneel before her. Damn it. Luo Qingtong had never even knelt before Yi Qianxian, okay? Now this princess of Great Yong wanted her to kneel. How shameless was she? Those from Blackfield who came with Luo Qingtong and didn't show up in the spiritual boat also had a slight change in expression. Luo Qingtong was their future mistress. How could she kneel before others? Not to mention that Feng Yuan was only the princess of Great Yong. Even if the emperor of Great Yong came in person, he didn't have the qualifications. The other party was really too arrogant. Immediately, those from Blackfield had a burst of cold anger on their faces. They suddenly jumped and were about to fly out. However, at this moment, the voice of Empress Dowager Yan Shi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sounded. Who said she doesn't have the qualifications to talk to you? Empress Dowager Yan Shi's figure suddenly stood up from the luxurious carriage. The arrival of Luo Qingtong and grandfather Luo gave her the greatest strength to persevere. At this moment, the Empress Dowager, who rose from the throne with insignificant qualifications and protected the bloodline of the late Emperor of Great Chu, was full of vigor. Pass on this Empress's decree. Qingtong of the Marquis residence of the Easternly nation, Fang Shumin, intelligent and thoughtful. She has won my heart. I am happy at first sight. From now on, she will be conferred as the Princess of Great Chu and will enjoy the honor of being the princess of the first wife. Empress Dowager Yan Shi didn't seize a personal matter for herself because of the position of Empress Dowager of Great Chu. But today, she was going to be selfish for once. If she watched her granddaughter being forced to kneel in front of her, she didn't deserve to be a grandmother. She didn't deserve to be the Empress Dowager of Great Chu. She would like to see who dared to humiliate her granddaughter in front of her. Empress Dowager Yan Shi. Hearing Empress Dowager Yan Shi publicly supporting Luo Qingtong, it was clear that she was deliberately opposing the Great Yong's sacred dynasty. Great Yong's seventh prince's face was filled with anger. From his point of view, Empress Dowager Yan Shi's temporary bestowal of Luo Qingtong as the Princess of Great Chu was clearly an excuse to slap Great Yong's face. But he didn't expect that Empress Dowager Yan Shi just wanted to protect her granddaughter from being bullied. Feng Wuan also believed that Empress Dowager Yan Shi was deliberately slapping Great Yong's face. But to help Luo Qingtong. She looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi, who stood up with a stern expression, and smiled faintly. Empress Dowager Yan Shi, have you forgotten something? Feng Wuan slowly stood up from his seat. The embroidered gown slid down the table in front of her. This Imperial Highness is not only Great Yong's first Imperial Princess, but also an Imperial Princess with the title of Holy. With the addition of Great Yong's imperial fate, my status is honorable and noble, surpassing all the imperial descendants of the four great sacred dynasties. Even if Luo Qingtong is the Princess of Great Chu, she still has to kneel and salute me when she sees this Imperial Highness. In front of this Imperial Highness, she has no right to not kneel. Feng Wuan's voice was cold. Even if Empress Dowager Yan Shi obstructed her today, she still wanted Luo Qingtong to kneel and kowtow to her. He wanted her to humiliate her elegance in front of him. No one could suppress her in front of her. This Luo Qingtong was no exception. Princess Feng Wuan, you. Empress Dowager Yan Shi was furious. Bestowing the title of Holy was only possible after praying to heaven and opening a temple. Even if she immediately bestowed the title of Holy on Luo Qingtong now, it would have no effect. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed at this moment. She looked at Feng Wuan and was about to speak. To Feng Wuan, she didn't put Luo Qingtong in her eyes at all. Even though she had been rejected by Yu Wenma in a roundabout way because of her, she had only casually sent a subordinate, who was even a martial royal realm expert. To her, he wasn't even comparable to the handyman by her side. And she had sent such a person because she had heard that Luo Qingtong had a pair of strange eyes. But now, the other party had ruined her good plans. Not only that, but she had also received the protection of Ming Zun in the Black Field. That was something that she couldn't even ask for. Chapter 759. Luo Qingtong looked at Yi Qianming, who suddenly appeared in surprise. She didn't know when this man came back. Luo Qingtong felt a burst of joy in her heart. She didn't notice that when she saw Yi Qianming appear, her eyes lit up. Yi Qianming noticed it. When he saw Luo Qingtong's gaze on him, his mood immediately brightened. This woman also missed him and was looking forward to his return. Thinking of this, he didn't feel so depressed when he heard that she had agreed to a bet with others and said that she would leave him if she lost. He walked towards Luo Qingtong. At this moment, Feng Wuan's voice suddenly sounded again. But Ming Zun, if you protect Great Chu like this, aren't you breaking the agreement between the Black Field and the four great sacred dynasties? There was an agreement between the Black Field and the four great sacred dynasties. The four great sacred dynasties couldn't interfere with the matters of the Black Field, and the Black Field couldn't interfere with the matters of the four great sacred dynasties. After all, Ming Zun of the Black Field was too powerful. No matter which side he sided with, it wasn't a good thing for others. At this moment, Yi Qianming spoke out to protect Luo Qintong, but Feng Wuan misinterpreted it as helping the Great Chu dynasty. After all, Empress Dowager Yan Shi had just conferred Luo Qintong as the Princess of Great Chu. Naturally, if Yi Qianming helped Luo Qintong, it was also helping Great Chu. Originally, this kneel and not kneel was just a tit-for-tat between Feng Wuan and Luo Qintong. Now, with Feng Wuan's words, it was directly raised to a fight between the sacred dynasties. Yi Qianming helping Luo Qintong was breaking the rules. Hearing this, Yi Qianming's footsteps suddenly stopped. Behind him, Bei Qing and Feng Yu both frowned and looked at Feng Wuan. What was the matter with this Princess Feng Wuan? Her master had already spoken, yet she was still so unforgiving. These words were clearly trying to use the agreement between the Black Field and the four great sacred dynasties to force Mistress to give in, so that she could continue to use her status to suppress the evil doctor. But she didn't know that the evil doctor was her master's only bottom line and reverse scale. Yi Qianming stared coldly at Feng Wuan. You want to follow the rules? His voice was cold. Good. In that case, I'll give the Great Yong sacred dynasty a rule. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve. In an instant, with a boom, an incomparably vast aura of power that far exceeded the Saint Realm exploded from the depths of the Great Chu Imperial Palace. Feng Wuan's arrogant expression, which had been waiting for Yi Qianming to give in, instantly changed when he sensed this aura. This is, her heart suddenly trembled. Transcendent Saint. It was another level above the Saint Realm. They were the true powerhouses who stood at the peak of the four great sacred dynasties. There were only a few such powerhouses in the four sacred dynasties. And there was one in each of the four great sacred dynasties. It was extremely difficult to alarm such powerhouses. They basically didn't care about the outside world anymore, and they wouldn't care about ordinary things at all. It was the same for the transcendent saints of the four great sacred dynasties. Unless it was a matter of life and death, they basically wouldn't appear. Otherwise, how could Feng Wuan and the others dare to openly plot to seize the throne of the Great Chu Empire? It was because the transcendent saint was in seclusion, and the Empress Dowager was in charge of the Great Chu Empire. They used the matter of becoming the Empress Dowager's husband to seize the throne of the Great Chu Empire. Once they successfully controlled the Great Chu Empire, even if the other party's powerhouses beyond the Saint Realm appeared, they wouldn't be able to do anything. After all, Great Yong also had transcendent saints. Chapter 760. Feeling the vast and majestic aura, Feng Wuan's complexion changed from green to white. She wanted to force Yi Qianming to give in so that he couldn't help Luo Qintong and the others. But she didn't expect that he would directly call out the transcendent saint of Great Chu. In such a situation, she and the others, before she finished thinking, the seventh prince of Great Yong on the other side had already turned pale and leaned towards her in a panic. You're in big trouble. Although he had always been a little afraid of this niece, the seventh prince of Great Yong couldn't help but reprimand her. Why did she have to go against that Luo Qintong? Why did she have to make others kneel? Even when Ming Zun of the Black Field spoke, she still didn't forgive. This was great. If the transcendent saint of Great Chu came out and knew what they were going to do to Great Chu, why are you panicking? Feng Wuan also panicked for a moment, but she soon calmed down. We're here to participate in the Empress Dowager's groom selection. Who can do anything to us? This time, the Empress Dowager's groom selection wasn't done by them. The people of Great Chu couldn't blame them. As long as they insisted that they had no other intentions, so what if the other party knew that their motives weren't pure? The only pity was that they couldn't use this to force Ming Zun to give in. That Luo Qingtong escaped. Thinking of this, Feng Wuan suddenly gritted her teeth. Ming Zun was so protective of the other party to this extent. That evil Dr. Ghost I had such a great influence on him. All of this should have been hers. If she had shown her medical skills earlier and gained Ming Zun's appreciation, she would be the one who was protected and spoiled. Thinking of this, Feng Wuan felt a burst of hatred. When the aura exploded, Luo Qingtong was also a little stunned. There was actually such a strong person hidden in the imperial palace of Great Chu. Then how could he be forced to this extent by the people of Great Yong? Do you think it's so easy to alarm such an expert? Little Pig saw through her thoughts and rolled his eyes. Moreover, this is the Empress Dowager's search for a groom, not a large-scale attack by Great Yong. If it wasn't for Yi Qianming, this expert wouldn't have been alarmed. This kind of powerhouse is the one who stabilizes the fate of the nation. I won't make a move for no reason. Luo Qingtong nodded her head in understanding. I see. As she spoke, her expression suddenly changed. It was a good thing that Yi Qianming called out this person. Otherwise, when her grandfather and grandmother got married, this expert would suddenly appear. Great Yong's seventh prince had Great Yong's backing. Naturally, he wasn't afraid. But if she wasn't by Grandpa's side, wouldn't that be bad? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong rejoiced. Then she thought, did Yi Qianming come here just for this? Otherwise, with this man's temperament, he would definitely be impatient to get involved in these matters. Even if he came back, he would definitely wait for her in the black field. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong couldn't help but look at Yi Qianming. The man's expression was indifferent. After alarming the transcendent saint of Great Chu, his gaze fell on Luo Qingtong. Or it could be said that since he appeared, his gaze had always been on Luo Qingtong. At this moment, when he saw the girl looking at him, the light in her eyes flashed, and he immediately understood. Humph, he snorted softly. This woman was smart and cunning and didn't misunderstand him. Otherwise, he would definitely settle this account with her when he returned. Previously, she used him as a bet. Even if he wasn't angry, he wouldn't let her off so easily. Chapter 761. The aura from the depths of the Great Chu Imperial Palace flew up quickly, and in an instant, appeared above the square. What's going on? Who alarmed me? The transcendent saint from the Great Chu Imperial Palace floated above the square, and his sharp eagle eyes instantly scanned the entire place. Anyone who was swept by his eyes felt as if they had been pierced by a needle. Those with slightly lower cultivation felt that the gaze was like a sharp blade, piercing their hearts and making them feel suffocated. It was as if they were about to die under this gaze. In fact, it was indeed so. The transcendent saint's sharp gaze could kill, and his aura was like a rainbow. This kind of expert had already reached the point where he could mobilize the power of heaven and earth with just a thought, and instantly kill weaker cultivators. What they cultivated was already on another level of power. Great Ancestor. When they saw the transcendent saint appear, everyone from the Great Chu Imperial Palace knelt down and greeted him. The transcendent saint did not pay attention to them, because he had already seen Yi Qianxian. Ming Zun. Seeing the silver-clothed black-haired man standing there, the transcendent saint's expression was slightly surprised, and then it quickly turned to vigilance and doubt. You woke me up. I remember that we have an agreement with you. We acknowledge the existence of the Black Field, and you are not to attack the four sacred dynasties. Why have you appeared in the Great Chu Imperial Palace? Thinking that Yi Qianxian had come to cause trouble, the transcendent saint's aura instantly changed, and he looked at Yi Qianxian with a wary gaze. I have no interest in your great Chu imperial palace. Yi Qianqian's voice was cold. I just don't want to break the rules. Your great Chu imperial palace's matters, settle it yourselves. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeves and looked at Feng Yu beside him. The latter understood and stood up with a smile to explain, Great Ancestor, don't misunderstand. Your Empress Dowager is looking for a husband, and we, people from the Black Field, have also come to participate. We were afraid that people would say that we broke the agreement, so we woke you up. As he spoke, he glanced at the slightly pale Feng Yuan and sneered in his heart. She actually wanted to force her master to give in. This Princess Feng Yuan really thought too highly of herself. Did she think that she was the evil doctor? In this world, other than Lord Evil Doctor, he had never seen anyone else who could make his master suffer. Groom selection. What marriage? Hearing Feng Yu's words, that transcendent saint instantly frowned. He looked at the people of Great Chu. Finally, the officials of Great Chu found a chance to speak. Immediately, they knelt down and cried, telling all the things that Prince Ning had done. Had it not been for Yi Qianxian deliberately alerting a transcendent saint, these courtiers would never have been able to see him in their entire lives. Not to mention complaining to the other party about Ning Wang's actions. In fact, King Ning's actions were enough to sentence him to death. But because he was a direct descendant of the Great Chu imperial palace and was a prince, the courtiers could not do anything to him without solid evidence to prove that he was harmful to Great Chu. At most, they could only imprison him. This was also the reason why King Ning was so unscrupulous. Firstly, he did not rebel, and secondly, he did not plot to rebel. He only created an opportunity for others to have the opportunity to overturn the Great Chu Empire. With the previous emperor's edict as a guarantee, what was he afraid of? Who could do anything to him? Chapter 762. Bastard. Nonsense. How dare you tarnish the sacred name of our Chu royal family? The Empress Dowager's groom selection. Wasn't that putting their Chu empire on the chopping board, waiting for others to take it? What's more, how could their Chu empire have such a scandal as the Empress Dowager's groom selection? The person who came up with this idea not only had sinister intentions, but also made their Chu royal family the laughingstock of the world. The transcendent saint's face was furious, and he directly raised his hand. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged above the entire Chu imperial palace. Countless forces of heaven and earth gathered, converging into an incomparably huge palm in an instant, and swept towards the Prince Ning's residence in the holy capital of Chu. In the Prince Ning's residence, Prince Ning was lying on the bed in his room, recuperating. Hearing the endless reports from his subordinates, he learned that the 7th Prince of Yong and others had entered the Chu imperial palace to force him to abdicate. He was very proud in his heart, and he smiled coldly. Empress Dowager Yan, she also had such a day. That bitch made him the laughingstock of the entire Chu and even the world. Then he would let her have a taste of this. The feeling of being forced didn't feel good, right? She wanted to help his imperial brother protect this empire, but he wouldn't let her. She wanted to protect this empire, fine. She could just die. Without her, the Empress Dowager Yan Shi, wouldn't Great Yong's conspiracy not succeed? Thinking of this, Prince Ning smiled sinisterly. At this moment, rumble. Above the sky, there was a sudden sound of thunder. Prince Ning was proud in his heart, but when he heard this, he frowned. He just saw that the weather outside was fine. Why did thunder suddenly appear? Just as he was about to ask the guards outside what was going on, he heard a burst of panicked voices outside. Hand! Hand! Heaven's might! Quick! Run! Those voices were panicked and frightened. Before Prince Ning could react, there was a boom, and the main courtyard pavilion he was in was instantly overturned. Rumble! The sound of explosions rang out. Prince Ning was still lying on the bed, and when he looked up, he saw a huge palm carrying a majestic force, grabbing towards him. Ah! Who? How dare you attack me in the holy capital of Chu? Ah! Don't you know that I am the Prince of Chu? A direct descendant of the Chu royal family. You! Prince Ning screamed and yelled at the same time. He was grabbed by the giant hand and was instantly dragged to the top of the Chu Imperial Palace's sacrificial ceremony square. All the bones in his body were almost crushed into powder. Just as he was about to curse at the person who had captured him, his voice suddenly stopped. On the square, a group of people looked at him indifferently, coldly, or gloatingly. As for the figure sitting in the middle, whose entire body was brimming with powerful and terrifying power, his face instantly turned pale. Grand Uncle. How could this be? How could this be? Grand Uncle Huang was supposed to be in seclusion, so why would he appear here? This was a transcendent saint. At the thought of what he had done, Prince Ning's face turned pale. The teeth in his mouth were also chattering. Imperial Granduncle, he desperately wanted to explain, but that transcendent saint didn't care about him at all. Humph. I don't have a royal descendant like you. You actually dared to tarnish the reputation of my Chu imperial family and invite a wolf into the house. Your death is not enough to be regretted. Chapter 763. Rumble. In the sky, the huge hand that was grabbing Lord Ning suddenly clenched as the transcendent saint moved. Ah! Prince Ning's scream was incomparably mournful. His flesh, blood, and bones were all crushed into pieces by that pinch. Blood drifted down from the sky. The transcendent saint's expression was cold as he clenched his fist. Blood refinement. Along with his voice, Prince Ning's shattered flesh and blood were all wrapped up by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In the next second, streaks of blood-colored aura were extracted from Prince Ning's flesh and blood, converging into a drop of crimson blood. At the same time, blood-curdling screams came from Prince Ning's residence. Then, countless tiny bloodline auras flew out and merged into the drop of blood in the Great Chu Palace. Feeling the powerful and vast aura in the drop of blood, Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and asked Little Pig in her mind, "What's that?" "Prince Ning's blood." "But that's not right. The power contained in this drop of blood is extremely powerful. Even Prince Ning's strength isn't that strong. How did he refine such a powerful drop of blood?" "It's the imperial bloodline in his body. This transcendent saint from the Great Chu imperial family is refining the power of the imperial bloodline in his body," Little Pig explained to Luo Qingtong. "Those who have surpassed the saint realm can pass on their power through their bloodline. The 4 sacred dynasties were able to stand tall in the eastern region and rule over countless powerful countries because of their bloodline. They have many experts among them, as many as the clouds. If it weren't for the fact that Great Yong was the one who forced Great Chu, ordinary people wouldn't have any ideas about them. However, there is a limit to the power of the bloodline. As time passes, if there are no more experts who have surpassed the saint realm, the bloodline will gradually disappear," Little Pig explained to Luo Qingtong. "Oh." Luo Qingtong nodded. "So that's how it is." She suddenly thought of Yi Qianqian's heavenly veins physique. That man's strength is definitely beyond the saint realm. No wonder those people on his side would stuff him with beauties every day. It didn't matter how many of them died. It was no wonder that such a powerful man would act like he had never touched a woman before. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh when she thought of the first time Yi Qianxian saw her, and the angry look on his face when she deliberately tried to get close to him. Boom! After the bloodline was refined, the transcendent saint waved his hand and summoned the drop of blood into his hand. Then he said coldly, "Don't worry, it's too late. King Ning's lineage is hereby stripped of their status as a direct descendant of the Great Chu imperial family and reduced to commoners. From now on, you can no longer consider yourself as a disciple of the imperial family of the Chu dynasty. This transcendent sage's words directly pushed everyone from King Ning's mansion to the bottom of the valley. After doing all this, his gaze immediately shifted to Great Yong's seventh prince and grandfather Luo. Humph. He snorted with a cold expression and was about to order the Empress Dowager's groom selection to be annulled. At this moment, Feng Wuan's voice sounded. Ancestor of Great Chu, since King Ning has been executed and the Great Chu imperial family has been cleaned up, shouldn't we continue with the Empress Dowager's groom selection? Chapter 764. Feng Wuan's complexion was pale. However, she still gritted her teeth and endured the pressure of the transcendent saint to say these words. Feng Wuan was not reconciled. She was just one step away. This transcendent saint could not guard the Chu imperial family forever. As long as imperial uncle could become the Empress Dowager's husband, she would have a way to control the Chu imperial family. Ning Wang was dead. In the future, the Chu imperial family would be Empress Dowager Yan Shi's world. There would almost be no more opportunities like this in the future. She could not let go of this opportunity. Looking at her, Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed. She also wanted to stop that transcendent saint's decision, but since Feng Wuan had made a move, then she would just watch the show. After all, this kind of action that drew hatred was not easy to do. Luo Qingtong looked at Feng Wuan's pale face and her tottering figure under the transcendent saint's pressure. When this matter was successful, she would thank her on behalf of grandfather and grandmother. Impossible. That transcendent saint looked at Feng Wuan coldly. In the history of the imperial family, there has never been a precedent of the Empress Dowager remarrying. It is even more impossible for the Empress Dowager to choose a husband. This matter was all caused by Ning Wang, that scum of the Chu imperial family. My Chu imperial family does not recognize this Empress Dowager's marriage. As he spoke, he directly pressed down on Feng Wuan. Yuan. Great Yong's seventh prince and others were frightened by this pressure and hurriedly came to pull Feng Wuan, but she waved them away. Feng Wuan had a stomach full of anger, and the ambition that had died before it even started. How could she let it go? If she left now, then Luo Qingtong and evil Dr. Ghost I would benefit. Feng Wuan's cold gaze swept across Luo Tong. The other party clearly had an affair with Empress Dowager Yan Shi. If she left, with Ming Zun's strength, who knew if the Chu imperial family would agree to them being together in the end? Feng Wuan would never allow such a thing to happen. She would never let Luo Qingtong and evil Dr. Ghost I get what they wanted. Chu imperial ancestor. Feng Wuan said coldly, the Empress Dowager's marriage was announced by your Chu imperial family. I don't care about the reason, since your Chu imperial family has released such news. Imperial family's imperial family. Now, you're saying that the Empress Dowager's groom selection is invalid. Are you deliberately fooling the world? Imperial family. The dignified imperial family of the Chu dynasty is so untrustworthy, casually deceiving everyone. Imperial family. Imperial family. Imperial Emperor S. If this transcendent saint from Great Chu insisted on cancelling the Empress Dowager's groom selection, Great Yong would have an excuse to send troops to Great Chu. This little girl, what a sinister mind. He was actually so determined to obtain Great Chu. The transcendent saint from Great Chu was so angry that his eyes were burning. He wished he could slap Feng Wuan to death with his sleeves. But he couldn't. The other party was Great Yong's wholly conferred princess. Unless he wanted to start a war with Great Yong, he absolutely could not touch her. And with Great Chu's current situation, it was obviously not suitable for them to clash with Great Yong, the second strongest of the four great sacred dynasties in China. Chapter 765. Isn't Great Yong being too overbearing? Her expression was indifferent as she stepped on Feng Wuan's words with a smile. Great Chu's ancestor might not want to cancel the Empress Dowager's groom search. Perhaps he just looks down on Great Yong's people. That's why he said such words. Don't tell me that Great Yong's people will also fly into a rage out of humiliation. Only you are allowed to come for the groom search, and others are not allowed to look down on you. There's no such thing as coercion in business, let alone a groom search. That's right. Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, the transcendent saint from Great Chu seemed to have found a way out and followed her words. I indeed look down on Great Yong's people. That's why I deliberately said that. As he spoke, his gaze swept coldly across Great Yong's seventh prince. In reality, to this transcendent saint from Great Chu, no matter who came from Great Yong, he would not let that person become the Empress Dowager's husband. Otherwise, wouldn't he be inviting a wolf into the house? Just as Feng Wuan thought, he could not always guard Great Chu's imperial family. If that was the case, he would not have to wait for Great Yong to steal the country. If his cultivation regressed, would he still need to wait for Great Yong to steal the country? They would be able to fight their way in openly. Therefore, even if this Empress Dowager's groom search was to end, he could not let Great Yong's people succeed. Thinking of this, the transcendent saint from Great Chu's gaze immediately landed on Yi Qianxian. Ming Zun, didn't you say that your people from Blackfield also came to participate in the groom search? If it was someone from Blackfield, he could be at ease. This transcendent saint from Great Chu was originally unwilling to continue holding the Empress Dowager's groom search. It was too shameful for the imperial family. However, Feng Wuan was aggressive and was obviously determined to win. Under such circumstances, he naturally could not give Great Yong's people an excuse or opportunity. However, if he wanted to continue, he had to find someone he could be at ease with. In this world, who could contend against Great Yong and make him feel completely at ease that Great Chu's throne would not be stolen? Naturally, it was the Blackfield. With Ming Zun's strength, even if he coveted the throne of Great Chu, he didn't need to resort to such underhanded means. Not to mention, with the other party's temperament, he didn't even care about treasures that appeared in the world, so why would he scheme to seize the throne of Great Chu? With that thought in mind, the transcendent saint from the Great Chu glanced at Bei Qing and Feng Yu. There were only the two of them standing by Yi Qianxian's side. The other experts of the Blackfield were all in the spirit ship. Ahem, exalted ancestor, it's not us. It's this. Luo Tong. Feng Yu and Bei Qing quickly clarified and pointed at Old Master Luo. Of course, he couldn't call him Old Master now. Both of them directly called out their names. Him. The transcendent saint from Great Chu looked at Elder Luo suspiciously. There was no other reason. The other party's strength was simply too weak. With such strength, how could he win against the Great Yong sacred dynasty? The transcendent saint from the Great Chu sacred dynasty felt depressed. At this moment, Yi Qianxian spoke. He can win. He believed that woman would definitely not participate in the Empress Dowager's groom search without confidence. Since she dared to bring Old Master Luo, it proved that she was already confident of winning. Although he didn't know what she would do, Yi Qianxian believed in Luo Qingtong. That woman was always able to give him a different kind of joy and surprise. Chapter 766. All right. Since Yi Qianming had said so, the transcendent saint of the Great Chu sacred dynasty could only believe it. In fact, he had no choice. Unless he was willing to be forced by the Great Yong people and give in. But that was impossible. Therefore, he could only place his hopes on Old Master Luo. He only hoped that he could win like what Ming Zun said. The transcendent saint of the Great Chu thought and suddenly said, Luo Tong, right? As long as you can win this time, I will confer you the title of Empress Dowager of the Great Chu and marry Empress Dowager Yan Shi. At the same time, I will confer your granddaughter the title of Princess Saint. Do your best. Yes. Old Master Luo was very excited. He did not expect that he could be recognized by the Great Chu sacred dynasty's royal family. This transcendent saint of the Great Chu sacred dynasty's royal family had spoken. Basically, there would be no obstacles to his marriage with Empress Dowager Yan Shi. In the future, he could always be with Yan Shi. Thinking of this, his heart was suddenly filled with fighting spirit. Imperial Granduncle, you can rest assured. Grandpa Luo was so happy that he directly called the transcendent saint by the wrong way. Cough. Luo Qingtong could not help but cough softly. My grandfather. Take it easy. Don't be too excited and accidentally offend him. However, the transcendent saint of the Great Chu sacred dynasty snorted coldly and did not say anything. Although the Empress Dowager's remarriage was a scandal of the royal family, it was nothing compared to protecting the Great Chu sacred dynasty. Moreover, the other party was from the Black Field and had Ming Zun as his guarantor. For the Great Chu sacred dynasty, it was not a bad thing. Therefore, the transcendent saint of the Great Chu sacred dynasty immediately turned a blind eye to old Master Luo's slip of the tongue. Otherwise, what could he do? He still had to rely on the other party to defeat the Great Yong people. Moreover, Ming Zun was watching from the side. Could it be that he had to slap his face? Did he think that the Great Chu sacred dynasty had stood for long enough and wanted to change dynasties? However, Empress Dowager Yan Shi looked nervous. When she saw that the transcendent saint did not intend to pursue the matter, she was relieved. On the contrary, Luo Qingtong was not anxious at all. With Yi Qianming around, she was not worried that anything would happen to her grandfather. Luo Qingtong herself didn't notice that she, who had always felt insecure, would unconsciously relax when Yi Qianming was around. She, who had always been the one to shoulder the burden when the sky fell, finally had a moment where she could rely on someone else. Humph. You overestimate yourself. Seeing Grandfather Luo excitedly agree to the transcendent saint's words, Great Yong's seventh prince had a sneer on his face. At this moment, he had already extricated himself from the fear of the transcendent saint. His niece was right. So what if the other party knew that they had ill intentions? The Empress Dowager's groom selection was arranged by Prince Ning. It had nothing to do with them. As long as they insisted on this point, even a transcendent sage would not be able to do anything to them. Moreover, this was indeed their best opportunity. This Luo Tong was just a marquis from an inferior country. Who knew what kind of luck he had to have in order to reach the martial emperor realm? The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Not to mention that he went all out, even if he gave him a handicap, he would not be able to win. Great Yong's seventh prince sneered and unconsciously said these words. Hearing this, Luo Qingtong immediately raised her eyebrows. Is that so? Since Great Yong's seventh prince is so confident, then please give him a handicap. He believed that the woman wouldn't do anything that she wasn't confident in. He also believed that she wouldn't joke around with her grandfather's life. Did that mean that she really had a plan? Yi Qianming raised his eyebrows slightly. It allowed a martial emperor to defeat a sage realm expert. He had to admit that Luo Qingtong had piqued his curiosity. Shua! Old Master Luo signed the life and death agreement in front of him boldly. For Empress Dowager Yan Shi, not to mention a life and death agreement, he would even dare to go through a mountain of swords and a sea of flames. What's more, he still had the soul borrowing diagram drawn by his granddaughter. Thinking of the powerful force he once felt, Old Master Luo clenched his fists. Chapter 768. Boom! Old Master Luo's figure landed directly on the high platform. Humph! Idiot, you can't wait to die. Great Yong's seventh prince sneered, and with a leap, he also appeared on the high platform in the square. Swoosh! As the two figures appeared on the high platform, the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty also raised his hand. A powerful defensive light instantly shrouded the high platform. This defensive light would only disappear if one of the two died. And when the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty made his move, Yi Qianxian also looked up indifferently. Swoosh! A ray of light instantly swept out from the man's sleeve. It split into two in midair, and instantly tied up Great Yong's seventh prince's hands and feet. Since the other party had signed a life and death agreement with Old Master Luo, Yi Qianxian naturally would not give him any chance to break free and cheat. Under the restraint of his aura, Great Yong's seventh prince's hands and feet seemed to be glued together, and could not be separated. Seeing this scene, the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty suddenly smiled. He originally wanted to ask Ming Zun to make a move. After all, he did not trust the people of the Great Yong's sacred dynasty. Of course, the other party did not trust him either. Therefore, he could only ask Ming Zun to make a move. He did not expect that the other party had already made a move without waiting for him to speak. It seemed that Luo Tong was indeed from the Black Field, and was highly valued by Ming Zun. Otherwise, why would a dignified underworld venerable lower himself to do such a thing? This thought made the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty a little more confident in Old Master Luo. After all, if Ming Zun valued someone so highly, there must be something extraordinary about him, right? But he did not know that the other party valued someone else. Seeing Yi Qianqian's move, Luo Qingtong's eyes were smiling. This man actually made a move personally. It was really a waste of talent. But with him making a move, Great Yong's seventh prince could forget about breaking free. He could only wait to be beaten up by his grandfather on the stage. Feng Wuan's gaze also abruptly froze. His hands under his sleeves could not help but abruptly tighten. She didn't expect Yi Qianxian to take care of such a small matter himself. A dignified underworld venerable was paying too much attention to this small Luo family. Just because of evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Wasn't he spoiling her too much? Feng Wuan felt another burst of jealousy and hatred. He couldn't get what he longed for, but it was easily grasped by another person. And that person had once defeated and humiliated her on the spot. This made Feng Wuan even more depressed and resentful. Seventh Imperial Uncle, don't kill Luo Tong so easily. Torture him for me. She transmitted her voice to the seventh prince of Great Yong, gritting her teeth tightly. Evil Dr. Gue Tong wanted to protect the Luo family and help him win the Empress Dowager's groom selection. She would not let him do as he wished. Yuan don't worry. This Luo Tong ruined our plans. Even if you didn't say it, I wouldn't let him die so easily. Great Yong's seventh prince transmitted his voice back coldly. His hands and feet were bound, but he was not completely defenseless. It was just that he could not use some cultivation methods and martial techniques. But with his strength that had just entered the saint realm, what cultivation methods and martial techniques did he need to use against a martial emperor? He could easily beat the other party into a dog. Chapter 769. Let the competition begin. The voice of the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty rang out. In an instant, the seventh prince of Great Yong sneered. In an instant, his entire body flew up and rushed straight towards Old Master Luo. Now, he was going to beat this man from an inferior country who dared to snatch his woman and spoil his plans in front of everyone. Let me give you a handicap. Humph. Even if I give you a handicap, my strength is enough to beat you to a pulp. The seventh prince of Great Yong's face was extremely ferocious. He sneered at old Master Luo in front of him. With a boom, the power around him exploded. The vast and majestic power of heaven and earth gathered from all directions in an instant. The so-called Saint Realm expert had cultivated his martial arts to the extreme and had transcended mortality to become a saint. A Saint Realm expert could use his own strength to attract the help of the power of heaven and earth. He could also command the spiritual power of heaven and earth and plunder the spiritual power of those who were weaker than him. In other words, when facing a Saint Realm expert, an expert below the Saint Realm would not be able to absorb any power from the surroundings. When the power in his body was exhausted, he would completely become an empty shell. He would have a powerful cultivation but would not be able to use it. This was the terrifying part of a Saint Realm expert. Of course, there were many times when they wouldn't even be able to wait until their strength was exhausted before they were killed by the terrifying might of a Saint Realm expert. Rumble. As the power around the seventh prince of Great Yong gathered, the spiritual power of heaven and earth in all directions moved strangely. All of it turned into the power of the seventh prince of Great Yong and suppressed old Master Luo. Luo Tong. Seeing this scene, Empress Dowager Yen she could not help but worry in her heart and stood up immediately. At this time, she did not care whether she would anger the transcendent saint of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty. No one knew Luo Tong's strength better than her. This man, before she chased him away, was only a martial emperor. She did not know what method he had used to directly raise his strength to the martial emperor level. After jumping so many levels, no one knew how much foundation he had damaged. It was very likely that his life was ruined. It was impossible for him to make any further progress on the path of martial arts. Under these circumstances, how could he contend against Great Yong's seventh prince, who had just entered the Saint Realm? The difference between the martial emperor realm and the Saint Realm was 2 whole realms. Even if Great Yong's seventh prince's hands and feet were bound, he still possessed the strength of someone who had just entered the Sage Realm. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager Yen Shi's heart instantly felt a sharp pain. She clenched the dagger in her hand. Suddenly, he made up his mind. That was, if Luo Tong died here, then she would not commit suicide. She would marry Great Yong's seventh prince and then find an opportunity to perish together with him. She had already done all she could for the Great Chu. However, she felt that she owed Luo Tong too much. Thinking of how she had always been angry with him because of the past, brooding over what had happened back then and treating him coldly, the tears in Empress Dowager Yen Shi's eyes continued to flow down. If she had known that this day would come, she would have treated him well. The two of them were in perfect harmony. Luo Tong. She got up recklessly and was about to rush to the place where the high platform was. At this moment, there was a boom, followed by old Master Luo's loud and sonorous voice in an instant. Chapter 770. As old Master Luo's voice rang out, everyone's eyes instantly focused on him. Then, except for Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian, everyone's expression changed drastically. Oh my God! Boom! In an instant, the seats of the many courtiers of the Great Chu were flipped over by them. Everyone looked at the scene on the high platform in shock. Some people were even flipped over by their own seats and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Everyone's face was filled with shock and stupefaction. The scene in front of them was really beyond their common sense. On the high platform, around old Master Luo, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was gathering. The power of the sage state. Oh my God! Everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape. This was not F*King scientific at all. Was this really not a hallucination? Everyone looked at the aura of power around old Master Luo in shock. Martial Emperor Realm. Martial Emperor Realm. Martial Emperor Realm. What the f*ck? But who could tell them what the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that was gathering around him was? Could it be that great Yong's seventh prince felt that it was too boring for him, a sage state expert, to fight a martial emperor realm expert, so he deliberately gave some of the spiritual energy to him so that he could fight himself? What nonsense! They could tell that the spiritual energy around him was completely different from the one gathered by great Yong's seventh prince. It was obvious that old Master Luo had gathered the spiritual energy himself. So who could tell them, how the hell did he do it? This was like seeing a ghost. If a martial emperor realm expert could gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and use the power of the sage state, then what was the use of those sage state experts? This was simply impossible. But the reality in front of them told them that such an impossible thing had really happened. What the f*ck? Bei Qing and Feng Yu were also stunned. Like Yi Qianxian, they had guessed that the evil doctor must have a backup plan. That was why they dared to bring old Master Luo to the groom selection. But what the f*ck? This backup plan was too frightening. A martial emperor realm expert had the power of a sage state expert? How were those saint realm experts supposed to live? More importantly, those experts who had reached the martial emperor realm, those experts who had reached the martial emperor realm and above would all go crazy. After all, who wouldn't want to have the power of a sage state expert in advance? And those powerful forces and clans would probably go crazy as well. After all, with such a method, their families would have many experts who were comparable to the sage state experts. Damn it, this could completely reshuffle the power balance of the continent. After all, how terrifying the power of a sage state expert was. If a family suddenly had many experts, Bei Qing and Feng Yu shuddered at the thought. Oh my God, the evil doctor, this was amazing. He had pierced through the heavens. He stared unblinkingly at the young girl below the stage who was as beautiful as a flower. Such a slender and weak body, yet it often hid an ability that made him feel incomparably surprised and astonished. Eyes, every time. She was like a huge treasure, tempting him to dig deeper, but he could never get enough of her. This was the woman he loved. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.